All right, all right, all right. Welcome to this episode of Warrior Week Parables from the Pit. My guest is Brandon. Brandon, welcome to the show, bro.
Thanks for having me.
All right, where are you flying from?
Phoenix.
Phoenix. Not a long flight, but still a commitment to be down here. Interesting, very interesting story, Brendan. I look forward to hearing updates on what has happened and what is going on inside of your life. We're going to have one hell of a show. Sit down, relax, and enjoy what is coming at you.
I was a man that didn't know how lost I was and sedated in my ways before the warrior week.
And we are back. We are back. Brandon, Warrior Week 52. What was your first experience knocking at the door of Warrior? Where that started, man?
I had an interesting ride when it came to Warrior, actually. I thought about that a lot when I actually first got introduced to Warrior. And it was probably about 4 years ago, actually, now. I first learned about it, probably early first quarter 2015. And I was sitting around one day, and the same guy that, introduced me to Warrior Week posted something about it, started watching it, and got intrigued by it at that point and, looked into it a little bit more, trying to figure out what it was about. And honestly, I had no clue what it was even about at the point. I thought it was something to do with fitness or wasn't sure, and kept looking at it. I'm like, this looks like a lot of fun. Let's go check this out.
Yeah.
I filled out the application at that point, and then for some reason never finished it. Never finished filling out the application to actually come in. Something, got in my way, and then I never went back to it. So I think about that now, like almost like that was supposed to happen, because at that point I don't think I was in the right place. I wasn't in the right mindset for it. So something in the universe stopped that from happening.
Sure.
And allowed Warrior to actually come into my life when I actually needed it the most.
So talk to us. When was that time, and what was happening in your life in that time, and how did that message came to you?
So it was July of 2018. I had been getting in multiple arguments with my wife left and right. Nothing was seeming to go right in anywhere in my life. I wasn't feeling fulfilled in my business. I wasn't feeling fulfilled with my family, with my wife. I was around my kids a lot, but I refer to it as, I spent a lot of time with them. I had a lot of quantity, but I didn't have a lot of quality time with them. I wasn't really present, even though I was there a lot with them. I wasn't actively engaged with them. And just a general disconnect from everything. And I had remembered I had just, me and my wife got in a huge blowout fight. And for the first time I looked at her, and so I had always made cowardly threats before. Yeah. Like, I want a divorce, I'm going to leave you, this and that. And I never meant it, and I just said it to be spiteful or mean or for whatever,
Sure.
Fucked up reason at that point. But I looked at her, and for the first time I said, like, this isn't working. I think we need a divorce. And for the first time I meant it. And after I said it, I didn't say anything else through the rest of the night. She went to bed crying, and I sat there on my, computer on the kitchen table for probably 6 hours or something like that. I was refusing to go to bed. I didn't sleep that whole night. And for some reason, at that particular point, something for Warrior came popping across my my screen, and I clicked on it, and I watched the quick little video, and then click here to watch more, watch that, and it just resonated with me. And there was a particular part in the video that resonated with me, and I had seen it before, but it's funny how when you see something in the right mindset, it could be the same thing but completely different message. And I forget at what point in the video it was, but Garrett looks at one of the guys on the beach, and he asks him, why does that even matter? And so I couldn't figure out any part of my life. I couldn't figure out anything mattered in my life. Like, why do I have all this stuff? Why do I have this business? Why do I have this family? What really matters in my life? And follow the steps and click clicked on the link, signed up, and I think I sent you a text message at like 3 o'clock in the morning or something saying, hey, I want my interview.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with you the next day and signed up for Warrior Week 52.
Man, it's crazy how the universe operates, and inside of that, how as a man we operate. Like I've often wondered about this idea of when you get into a relationship and it started like boyfriend girlfriend relationship, and there's this threat about I'm going to leave you, I'm going to end this, and then that grows into marriages, and inside of marriages as somebody somebody hurts us, right? We want to hurt them back, and one of the ways to slightly hurt them back or to get significance or attention back on us is to continuously to repeat this. I've done it multiple times myself, which is repeat this threat that it in reality is fucking bullshit. But you say it out there in order for it to change something, and often it doesn't do shit because it's not true. So it doesn't have any fucking power, and it comes out. But I wonder if that was not an option. If you are in a marriage where divorce was not an option, just think about this scenario, right? You get married, and when you marry a woman, it's like, listen, man, divorce is not an option. Like, it's not an option, right? Unless there is like physical threats and like, unless you're talking about like like abuse, right?
Right.
But as a soft option, it's not an option. You don't even have the option of divorce.
Right.
The only way you have an option of divorce is if, there's physical abuse, there's mental abuse, there's all kind of like craziness taking place. But normal arguments and the fact that, okay, we argue about this, we argue about that. I don't like this about you. You don't like this about me. And inside of that, we separate and we go our way because we formulate an idea that we kind of don't like each other, right? I'm just saying, in an imaginary world, if that was not an option and we could not use that, what would happen to a lot of marriages?
I think a lot of marriage, they would learn to work with each other, learn each other's differences, and grow to accept them. And actually, the funniest part about the whole thing is the more I come to accept, my wife's differences, the more I come to appreciate her differences and how they actually complement me. And if I stop seeing them as a threat against me,
yes,
and I can utilize them, to help our relationship, to help our family, to even help our businesses, she compliments me more than anybody I've ever partnered with in business. She compliments me more than any of those people.
Yes.
Because her strengths are my weaknesses. She's organized. She loves paperwork. She does all this stuff that I hate.
Yeah.
And she would just compliment every aspect of my life. And the more I'm going down this path, and the more I'm actually just open to the concept of that. We seem to be breaching new levels and going farther and farther.
Man, I truly believe that there could be a reframing of this entire game of marriage. And I'm not coming in from an angle of religion or, if you divorce, you'll burn in hell. I'm just coming in as eliminating the fucking option, the easy way out, right? Because there are a lot of fucking couples out there, this, I will divorce you, I'll get a divorce. It's just the easy way out. And it's much easier when kids are not involved. And when kids are involved, it's still a fucking easy way out.
It is, yeah. It's definitely the easy way out. And, I think one of the hardest things for me was I've been surrounded by it. My business partner got a divorce. Multiple people around me are getting divorced. Then I partnered on another business with somebody else. Next thing you know, he's getting a divorce. And it's a difficult thing to be around, and it bleeds into your life.
Yeah. It gets projected on you.
It does.
It gets projected on you by the surrounding society. And deep down inside, if we have people sitting here and say, you know what, I got a divorce, but I truly never went to war for my wife. Because that's exactly what happened that night when you were sitting pissed off. There was an invitation for you to wage war against yourself and go to war, not against her, but for her. This was the first time, and I think we talked about this on your interview. We said, have you truly ever gone to war for her, right? Not I love her, not that, obviously I care for her, but have you actually went to war for her and fought for her, fought for keeping her, fought for the next 40 years of your life and building that? And you'll be surprised, most men will be saying, no, I haven't done that. Well, that's what Warrior Week's experience created for them, which was an opportunity for them to go for war for the people that meant the most for them. And so I truly believe that, like you said, 4 years ago, you came across it, and then 2018, there was an invitation for you to go to war for what you truly love and felt. Talk to me how this resonates, this invitation to wage war against, yourself and against what the old beliefs.
It's interesting when, I find myself, in a situation with my wife now that, I've been in a million different times. We've had these exact same conversations, different subjects, whatever it may be, but it's the exact same scenario over and over again.
Yeah.
And the more I'm going down this path, and like you said, I'm able to wage war against it, and I'm able to to fight for her. I'm just completely different in those conversations. I still have my moments where I slip and fall on my face, but I'm able to interact with her on a different level, and we're able to grow. Not only me grow, but also us grow as a couple to where we're understanding more about each other.
Yes.
And it's been actually kind of amazing to witness that. And so she started with some personal coaching about just over a year ago now, and went down some paths, figured out some stuff about herself, and then when I came to Warrior Week, so we've been going through this process now for starting with her about a year, and looking back on where we were a year ago, it's just night and day.
So you stepped into the gates of Warrior, really truly wanting to find the answer to the question of why does it even matter? Like, why does it even matter that I have this business? Why does it even matter that I have this family? I have this wife? Why does it even matter that I find myself in this physicality? And talk to me about the first night into the pit at Warrior, what you had to face, because it's in that space that for the first time ever you had to kind of accept that this is what's real, this is the facts, this is the pit that I've dig myself into, and tomorrow is the next day. Well, we'll talk about tomorrow, but ultimately, what was it that you faced?
I faced a lot of things that I'd been holding on to from my past, things between how I was raised, so my father left when I was 7. My mother and stepfather had a very, unhealthy marriage my whole life growing up. And just in dealing with all that, them going through all their issues, they basically left me as a kid on my own when I was 15 years old. So I was in this, kind of fragile state. They were fighting all the time, traveling all the time, and basically they were running away from their issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They were constantly at each other. They were either at each other's throats or life is great and we're going to go off to Italy for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I was never, really shown a constructive manner in how you actually deal with a situation. So I had a lot of resentment built up from that I had to deal with that first night, and just erasing all those stories that for some reason has to be my life.
Mm-hmm. And that allowed you to knock at the door of what we call purpose and meaning, and which is the second chapter of the experience here at Warrior Week. And towards the end of it, what has opened up for you in terms of the answer to why does it even matter? What started to formulate? Because Warrior Week is a life-changing experience, and what doors started opening up for you right then?
The doors that started opening for me right then, it was actual genuine love. I actually felt a deeper love for my wife and my kids than I had ever experienced before at that point. Until that point, it always felt kind of like a show to me. It felt like I was living somebody else's life, or I was watching a television series. It wasn't real. It never really felt connected. And after that, just this immense appreciation opened up, and I was able to actually feel something that I hadn't felt in a long time, like just true, deep love and connection.
Yes. So you gained that, and you gained that perspective and that awareness.
Right.
It's always been there, but you are now much more aware of it. So therefore, you much more appreciate it, and it fuels you more than ever. And so you come back home. Talk to us about how did you started like injecting that love into your family, into your wife, and where are you today with that?
I was able to just inject it by communication, actually listening, actually being, attentive when my kids talk, listen to them. Don't just, go through the auto responses. When my wife, talks, actually listen to her, communicate with her, reciprocate with her, show her how I actually feel about her rather than just expecting her to understand it based on the words that I'm telling her, Oh, before it was, hey, I love you.
Yes.
But there was nothing really there. I wasn't ever trying to actually show her that I actually loved her, show my kids that I actually love them and care about them. And I thought that just by me being there all the time, that should be good enough, and it wasn't. It wasn't even close.
Right. And so that fueled you also inside of discovering, the purpose for your business at that time, which you were confused around your business, not knowing how it's going to grow, whether you're going to, let it go and burn it all down to the ground. I remember it was almost like, dude, I feel completely disconnected with this business. I don't see any identity in there. I'm just ready to just let it go and start something else. And you're sitting here with days away from just like selling your business and a tremendous amount of growth. What has changed your perspective inside of that for you?
The idea of actually expanding and going farther beyond what we were, my current business partner, he was just so complacent with where we were in the business, and he never really wanted to grow, and he never wanted to take it to the next level. So it kind of stunted me at the same point, because if I can't get him on board, me investing 100% of the money to grow this business for him to reap the rewards, it just didn't make sense for me at that point. So for the last, 2.5 years, I've just felt stuck in this business, and I make good money, and there was nothing wrong with that. But I just came to realize it doesn't matter what the dollar figure is at the end of the day. If I'm not growing and I'm not trying to expand the business and take it to that next level, then what am I even doing this for? And that would bleed over into all the other areas of my life.
Yeah.
If I don't feel fulfilled here, I'm not going to get the fulfillment here or there or anywhere. And it wreaked more havoc than I ever thought it would. And, in the beginning, it was, for the first couple months, once we hit a certain level of sales and income, it was, okay, maybe I'll take a month or two and go easy for this month or two.
Yeah.
And then it was, 2.5 years later, same exact place, same situation, nothing better.
And so you made some changes into that. And where do you find yourself today in terms of expansion?
So right now, what we're currently doing is like you said, we're days. Hope we were supposed to close about 2 weeks ago on the business, but just lawyers being lawyers, all that whole process. So currently, what we're doing is we're looking. Once we get the sale go through, actually in 4 days, we move to St. Louis.
Okay.
We're going to open up some new shops there, go for some licenses there, and expand into that space, and just keep that ball moving forward. Never be complacent with where we are. Just keep going forward. So find myself in a position where I owned half of one business here.
Yes.
And now we're going to own possibly multiple in a different market.
When was the last time you were excited about business like this, like you are right now?
The last when I opened this one, so that was 8 years ago now.
Yeah.
When, right when we first launched this one, I was extremely excited. I was pumped. It was something new every single day. It was an up and coming industry. Everything about it was new and learning, constantly learning something new. And so it's been 8 years.
It's been 8 years, man, which means, finding that joy and finding that excitement, and that also that you bring that at home. Right. You bring all that energy, and also vice versa. You borrow from that home, so it's a vicious circle now that functions in your favor.
Yeah, and the hidden gem behind the whole thing is now my kids don't remember me starting that one. Now they get to see from scratch starting a business, and they get to see what that process looks like. So I get to constantly explain to them and work with them and teach them what it is we're doing, why we're doing it, and so they're learning a lot as we go through the whole process.
So they are engaged. How old are your kids right now?
10, 8, and 2.
10 and 2. So if you look at the 10-year-old and the 8-year-old, and you engage them now, right? They're involved in the process of understanding what business is. If you realistically look at the business at the school system, the system that you and I were brought into, the system that you and I were brought into, bro, that never fucking taught us about money. Like literally, there was no fucking class on how to make money. There was no class on how to run a business. There was nothing on that. And you sit down here and you wonder why. Even in our college classes, we all some generic conversation studying other businesses, but there was no clear entrepreneur classes and showing you skills and mindsets of business owners.
No, there wasn't.
Like that shit had to be forged outside of it, right?
Right.
And systematically, we were cornered in a place to have a job.
Yeah, I mean, that's honestly, that's what, me and my wife, we always talk, school teaches you is how to have a 9-to-5 job, and just how to go somewhere and just
Teaches you to be a doctor, which is very
it.
successful.
Right.
Teaches you to be an engineer. Teaches you to be a lawyer. Those are the top three, and an astronaut.
Right.
But those are like the top position. And after that, it's any other position that is a job.
Right.
Right. Nothing wrong with a job, but the system systematically doesn't want the mindset and the skill sets of business owner.
No.
But the question is why? Why do I want my kids not to have the skill set and the mindsets of a business owner today?
Right. Yeah, we actually made the decision, I think it was last December,
Yeah.
actually. So about a month after Warrior Week, once we decided, hey, we're going to go ahead and sell the business, we're going to do all this, get all the process up and going, my wife and I were having a conversation about school and just how we just didn't agree with, sending our kids off. It basically seemed like a daycare for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So we actually, and they were in a good school. They were in a private school. We
Correct.
actually pulled them out and decided to homeschool them.
Yeah. And how's that going?
It's going good. It's definitely got its ups and downs on it.
Sure.
And it's a learning curve because, again, I don't know how to be a teacher. I've never, taught math or science or any of this stuff. But thank goodness there's online programs for some of the basics. And then
The homeschool, does someone come to the house or you have to do it?
no, we're doing it right now. Yeah.
Okay.
So
But do you have the option of somebody coming to the house?
Yeah, we can hire a private teacher.
Okay.
Which I've definitely looked into hiring a private teacher for the
Dude,
core
I'm telling you,
subjects.
that's not a bad idea at all. Like years ago, you would talk to me about that. I would say, no, that is insane. Weird people would do that. Today, I'm in a totally different place. I look at the school systems and like the teachers are overwhelmed with tasks and underpaid,
Right.
which affects the quality of energy they're going to be putting into a kid. Never mind what they're going to teach them. Energetically, they're fucking drained, man.
They are. Yeah, for sure. So we're excited about that, and I get to work with them, and they get to actually, they're in my office with me.
Yeah.
They're actually we set them up their own desks, everything at our office where
That's
we
brilliant.
work out of, and so they get to actually see the process, see what we do in there day in and day out. And just they glean. Kids.
Dude,
kids are sponges, so
life-changing.
they just glean all this stuff.
Life-changing.
Yeah.
And that's so smart because they are sponges, right? So when you utilize that sponge at 10, dude, by the time the sponge is 15, he's fucking lethal in business.
Right.
Like knows P&L. Imagine if a 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids knows P&L.
Right.
Knows P&L, knows marketing and sales and advertising,
Right.
systemization, gets to know people, gets to know processes. Like, dude, you're talking about someone that you forged from a business mentality to be successful. Now, it doesn't mean that he shouldn't learn about math and science and biology, because I truly believe what school did for me personally is that it trained my mind on how to think, right? That's a fundamental thing that is very important. The constant training on how the mind will think. There is a problem. How do I think to solve it? So the years in school trained me on problem solving, you and I, right?
Yeah.
And so in addition to showing the how of the money and what money is, because money is ultimately the component of the business, right?
Yeah.
And in addition to showing that, but also showing a person how to think, that could help them become what they want, because we still need scientists, right? We still need people, doctors and engineers, and the passion of a kid is always found. They know what they want. Like, no matter how much you train them and you teach them, they'll ultimately choose what they want because the calling is very clear.
Yeah, and it's funny because I even see that in my my 10 and 8-year-old, and I see what they naturally go for. And the 10-year-old is very artistic. She likes science. She likes that kind of stuff. And the 8-year-old is all about business. She comes with different ideas all the time. Some of them are just absolutely ridiculous, but it's the funniest thing in the world to see her little mind work and actually put together a business plan that might actually work.
And this is great. I mean, that's the whole point of the podcast here, is to have real conversation and real parenthood and real situation with dads and moms. And like when you're an adult, 40, 42, and you've got 2-3 kids and life is happening, and yet you don't feel happy, you don't feel fulfilled, and you don't know why all these things are there. And the questioning becomes the worst thing you can do is not have an answer for it. which ultimately builds anxiety and puts you in a place where you're worrying. And as you worry and you have anxiety, as you start doubting, you're not a powerful man. When you have doubt and you start like having all these piled up questions in which you don't have the answer for, or you think you don't have the answer for, or you're not willing to do the work to find the answer, you start losing power. And in that place, you start questioning a lot of things. Things don't grow, right? You end up 8 years stuck in the same place. Doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's good, but it hasn't grown.
Right.
And you take that same fog of weakness into other places of your life, because that becomes life.
Yeah.
Right? So you check the checklist of being a dad, of being a husband, of managing your body and take care of your body, and also like spirituality is another component.
Right.
Like, dude, like how do you develop that, and how has it been for you? How has been your spiritual development inside of this journey?
It's been good. I've always been a spiritual person by nature. Wasn't raised in the church. My mom gave me a couple different guidelines. She's like, you can go try any church you want, Brandon. We don't care what you do. Go walk to any church, do whatever. My stepfather, he was raised in a Catholic boarding school over in the United Kingdom, so he was anti-religion from the get-go. But that was never me, so I was always open to the idea of it and just didn't know where I fell in the whole thing. But since Warrior Week, it's been, the meditation and listening to the voice in my head that, some call God, some call, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's just a voice in your head that's calling you to do the different things. And I felt so much more connected just even with my own voice, my own thoughts, my own opinions, my own knowing what I know.
Yeah.
And feeling how I feel and being okay with that.
Yeah.
That's been, the whole process, honestly, all around has been just life-changing for me.
If you would talk through these microphones to a guy that's hearing you out, right? It's just, fuck, man, the guy that's talking right now he's talking to me because, like, dude, I'm the guy that was stuck in the business for 8 years and still am. I'm the guy that's making a good living, but I feel that I don't know why it all matters, right? Or it's just like ultimately, I don't know, like my wife, my kids, my family. Why does it all fucking matter? If you're talking right now through this microphone to a guy that feeling it, or at one point felt and has fucking ignored it, right? And it's smacking him in his face in this conversation. What would you say to him directly, man?
Somebody that like felt this conversation?
Felt this conversation where you were at in July.
Where I was at in July. I would say listen, you got to listen to that voice in your head. You got to trust your gut instinct. If your gut instinct is telling you to do something, you got to just be able to jump all in and go into that and just be willing to commit to wherever it takes you, which is exactly what I ended up having to do. And I didn't like it at first. The lead up to Warrior Week, halfway through it, I'm looking at my wife like, what the fuck did I get myself into? Is this is this for me?
Yes.
And even after the first day, second day, the whole way through, even after Warrior Week, I started questioning the whole thing. Is this for me? And it wasn't until I started seeing those changes, until my wife acknowledged the changes within me, that it all kind of came full circle for me, saying like, oh, this actually works. I started actually witnessing myself react differently to certain things.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it all came to me like, yeah, this is worth it. This is everything I needed, and then some.
And in this process, what is the value of association of the brothers inside of your life today, and truly like being associated and no longer operating on a fucking island alone? Not that you're socially alone, but simply like fucking operating alone, making decisions, but having a group of other men that you can fully trust and consider them as part of your association.
There's no dollar value you could put on that association. That alone feeling that I had prior to Warrior Week was one of the worst things, looking back on it now, and I didn't even know it at that particular point, that anybody can ever experience. When you have a good business and you have a healthy family and you have a beautiful wife and you're not happy, that feeling of just, what's wrong with me? Why am I not happy over this? Like, I should be ecstatic. I have a great life. and that feeling of just shame and guilt that comes over you, you can't explain that to anybody. Because if you go, if I walk to, somebody else that has, a basic job and their wife just left them, and I tell them I'm not happy, they're going to look at me like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You have a great life. What you get all to do all these things. You guys go on vacations. You do
Yeah.
all this stuff. Everyone in your family's healthy. You have nothing to be upset about or miserable about. Shut up. Stop crying.
Sure.
But coming here and just the association with the other guys, and knowing that they go through the same stuff I go through, their wives, their kids, their businesses, the whole dynamic, and you can just understand everything about them, and they understand everything about you, and just the trust and the bond that's formed between that. There's no dollar value. There's no any value you can put on that.
And bring an interesting thing is that too often the guy that has things working out for him but doesn't feel happy, the minute he expresses himself, he's shut down.
Right.
He's shut down, and he's made to feel guilty for not being appreciative or not being grateful. Often that's shut up, motherfucker. You're not grateful. You should be grateful. Like, okay, that check, grateful check. I am grateful, right? But at the same time, I am that I am, which is I am my totality, and I am not happy right now. And I'm not happy, there's a source of this happiness that I have to go seek and find and figure out what is fueling this. And maybe it's a story, whatever that is, but I cannot deny it, right? I have to find where the source of the story is. And that's what Warrior does. It brings it to the source. It questions the story that I'm not happy, not in a way that says, fuck off, man, don't be ungrateful, but in a way that says, well, you said you're unhappy. Let's go and figure out why.
Right.
Are you willing to go figure out? And you're like, okay. And then you're halfway through it, and you're like, well, maybe this is not for me. Maybe, like that's the easy answer. That I just had a guy that quit this weekend through the process. Great guy, great fucking guy. Exactly where you were today. Same thing, dude. I'm telling you, same fucking thing. But he quit because 2 days into it, he's like, same thing. Is that for me? He texts me, he says, Coach Sam, I'm not sure. Is that for me? So I invited him on a phone conversation. We had a 30-minute conversation. And he had to make a decision a few days later, and he chose out, and that's fine, because at the end of the day, this is a choice. Our role here is a guide and to guide and light in a direction for a man to make a choice, to take that choice upon, is not to control anything. And ultimately, the story of this is not for me actually dominated his decision now. It doesn't mean in the future he won't be here or that he won't find another way to deal with the source. But that source comes from somewhere, right? And often is, and I say this often is that we start looking for shiny objects outside where deep down inside the fucking diamond is there.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was miserable in the current state that I was, and, I filled a lot of those voids with material items,
Yeah.
I was buying stuff I didn't want to impress people I didn't like, and it was stupid. Couldn't figure out why I was doing it, and it was actually kind of funny. When I got home from Warrior Week, I went on like a purge, and I'm like, I'm gonna sell all this shit I don't like.
Yeah.
And I had to get to a point. My wife stopped me. She's like, let's take an inventory of what you actually like before you just sell everything, Brandon. So that, thank God she stopped me on a couple of those things, because some of them were for me. But yeah, I just that emptiness that you feel on the inside, and that it was with me. It was guilt.
Yeah.
Guilt that I knew people out there had real problems, but yet I wasn't happy, and I didn't know why. I didn't know why I wasn't happy. I didn't know why on anything. I couldn't answer the question when Garrett asked the question in the video, why does that even matter?
Yeah.
I had no answer for it. Why does any of this matter?
And like they often label this as midlife crisis, and they think like when a dude buys a car or buys a gadget or another material, he's unhappy. He may be very happy and he's buying those, and he may be actually unhappy and is buying those, and it may have nothing to do with the fact that he's happy or unhappy. But the reality is, there is a lot of guys when they hit certain age with certain amount of kids, married and owning business, that they end up being in a place where they're questioning their happiness. And it's no matter what their wife says, because your wife was giving you compliments all the time, no matter what their wife do and says, they still can't hear it. It's almost like they have to witness the fact that they are not alone in this. Because not being happy is translation to I feel alone. And this loneliness has nothing to do with my wife and my kids. But I feel alone as a man. And like some will link it back to a feeling of abandonment back in the days, but most will look at it and say, why do I feel alone? And ultimately it's because of the mask that we have to put on, right? Buy shit that you don't want for people that you don't like. What is the best example of that? Buying a round of drinks when you don't even like drinking. Right? You start buying round of drinks for fucking guys you don't give a fuck about, and you find yourself in a weird fucking place. Like, am I a fucking clown? Am I a clown? Because that's how I painted myself to be. I've become a fucking clown. Yeah, I can pretend that I'm not, but at the end of the day, my patterns of behaviors are showing me that I'm a fucking clown. I'm not a fucking alpha. I'm a fucking pussy. Right. I'm a guy that is entertaining other guys for the hope of significance and being liked. There's significantly something wrong in that image.
Yeah.
And that's the image that breaks away, right? When that image breaks away, and when all that fantasy land that we create for ourselves to give ourselves significance, when that goes away, inside in that place, we become face to face with the fact of who we really are. Right. And who we really are may be really fucked up, but that's exactly who we are, right? All of it. All of it. There's a beauty that we see in ourselves, the totality of ourselves, when we step away from the false lift that we created for ourselves. The false lift of belonging, the false lift of I'm this person because I have this or I have this status. When we let go of all that and we say, dude, I'm just me, but I'm looking for a bunch of friends. I'm looking for a bunch of dudes just like me. I'm me, but I'm alone, and I don't want to be alone. Because I remember back in the days, I wasn't alone when things were not complicated. When I was younger, I would make friends. And that's it. And now things have become super complicated. The other day, my son is having a interaction over the text with this kid. And this kid is like, I'm going to beat you up because, you were mean to my brother. And my son is like, obviously affected by this. I figured this out. And now I find myself getting engaged on the text with this, 11-year-old, right? And so back and forth, I'm like, hey, man, your dad needs to know about this, but you're not going to beat anybody up and stop texting my son. But our engagement is in such that in a world that we're so connected, right, using mobility and technology, we are yet extremely disconnected.
Right.
My son is disconnected to his friends because they're using fucking at 10 or 11, they're using, phones to text each other. I am disconnected to my son, and I am disconnected to that person because I don't find myself involved, but I rather trying to control the situation. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm controlling the situation, and in fact, I shouldn't be controlling the situation. I should be involved in this situation. And there was ways back in the days to get involved in this situation, right? You go to some, where do they live? Who is this person? Right. I have patience to deal with them the next day, but yet, because I have access to this technology, I use it for disconnection. I text an 11-year-old, and what I do is that I create disconnection immediately to satisfy a situation that needs to be solved.
Right.
Back in the days, it wasn't like this. You find out where the parents is. You go meet up the parents. You have a conversation.
Right.
And you take your time to solve a problem that is not supposed to be as threatening as this motherfucker telling my son that he's going to send him in the hospital. Well, you're not going to fucking talk like that to my son, right? I get engaged. But at the same time, this motherfucker happened to be an 11-year-old, which means, like, what the fuck am I doing talking to an 11-year-old? And where the fuck is his dad?
Right.
Where the fuck is his dad? Because I'm here. But then I can't blame the 11-year-old. I can't blame the dad. And I can't blame the system and the society. What I can look at is my patterns and behaviors. Is that why do I need to solve a problem immediately when I just need to slow down? And this reaction may be a completely different reaction. The point of this is what happens when we start operating alone.
Yeah.
Like the society, environment, and conditions are favoring men to operate alone.
Yeah, they definitely are favoring for men to be operating alone. Yeah.
And we end up not trusting not too many people.
No, nobody. Trust nobody. That was where I found myself, is not trusting a single person out there, and I couldn't, tell anybody any of this. I was just an island. I was my own little self. What is that cliche thing? Well, I'm a lone wolf.
Yeah.
Is what they always
Yeah.
what they would always refer to it as, and I never wanted to be that person. But that's where I found myself. I had cousins, brother, my whole life.
Yeah.
Couldn't talk to any of them about anything that I was going on.
Yeah.
Instead, when we get together, it would be just, a bunch of bullshit, like how great our life was.
Yeah.
I couldn't go to them and level with them and tell them these feelings I was having at that particular point.
Correct. And that's it, man. We get conditioned to that place. And today you're in a place where, you don't want to be around people that don't want to be like you.
No, I that was the most, one of the most revolutionary things for me, is that these people that I used to want to associate with, even though I had nothing in common and I couldn't level with them or tell them anything that was going on, I found myself not wanting to be around them anymore, and only wanting to be around people of a like mind, which in my life honestly ended up just being my wife.
Yeah.
So now when it comes to, we're moving halfway across the country in 4 days, and that's fine because I have her there.
Yeah.
I don't even care to, I haven't even told my cousins. Nobody knows I'm moving.
You're right.
Because it doesn't even matter to me. I'll tell them when I get there. When they text me randomly, hey, do you want to go out? I live, 2,000 miles away from you. Sorry, buddy.
So things are growing. Excited for you to move. 4 days, huh? 4 days from now, bro.
Yeah, we leave Sunday.
Shit, is everything packed?
My wife's home doing that right now.
Okay, well, dude, that's commitment, you being on the show. I want to thank you for your time being here. I'm excited for you, the new adventure in San Luis. You're going to be a little bit further from us, but, it's just an extra hour, 2-hour flight.
Yeah, it just adds on actually, I always typically end up, this is the first time I normally drive out here, so.
Oh, okay.
Normally it takes me 6 hours, so it's the same time for me.
Same time.
Yeah.
Great. Well, bro, thanks for being on the call. And if you're watching the show, you can find more details about the show on warriorweeknow.com, where you'll find a transcript of the conversation. There's be some quotes and questions. There'll also be audio and video on warriorweeknow.com. This is also available on iTunes and all the other carriers of podcast device, and as well as recordings. Thank you again for being on the call. And gentlemen, we'll see you on the next one.
I was a man that didn't know how lost I was, and sedated and